and we'll get this thing rolling. This will be the bit of a pre-stream for the interview show, which will be every other Monday in opposition to the regular WP plugin show.
Nice.
As I try to get these out every week, although I won't do the next one because I have to go up island for some important stuff that's got to be dealt with. But at any rate, welcome to the show, Shawn. I really greatly appreciate you being the first one to renew the interviews of WP Plugins A to Z. This is actually technically interview 63, but I have done hundreds of them. I just didn't manage to track them for a long time. I started tracking them a couple of years ago.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yeah, and as we were mentioning here, I was wandering through your website this morning and, recommending a search function for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff. We just have to make it a little easier for people to discover.
Yeah, well, you do. You have a lot of great content there, and it's going to be quite nice. And for those that drop in here to the YouTubes, and you'll catch the stuff that is not available to the download crew, but I'll make sure I make mention of the download crew. This little pre-bit here, 5 minutes, 6 minutes or so, is basically just for me to make sure all the audio is working, all the tweaks are working up, everything, and all the connections are going. And to make it easier, I gotta do this for you so that you can see what's happening. There you go. Share a screen with you so you can see the screen that's being broadcast out at any given point in time. Get all the little bits and pieces in here. Oh, and I know I also got to send out the bat signal. Let's see if the bat signal will work for me today. See if we can draw some people in here.
Excellent. Anything that has a bat signal, I'm on board. So,
well, at least YouTube makes it relatively easy to quickly share it off to your Twitter feed. I don't use WhatsApp. Could even pop it to Reddit. Hey, I'll have to think about how I can use it to pop it into Reddit, since I'm becoming more active on Reddit again.
Yeah, Aaron's pretty keen on Reddit, and I go in there every so often.
I've actually found some very interesting stuff in there in the last couple of weeks. It's been really interesting.
Oh God, it's a deep pool. A lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. You gotta wade through a pretty heavy waist deep of muck to get to what you want. But
yeah,
on the whole, it hasn't been too bad. I was really surprised. I haven't used it in years. I've forgotten I'd even created a Reddit account when I decided to dive back into it. It seems my account is so old. I actually have the username of Dragon Lord there.
Nice.
It's like I look up thinking, wow, and I look back and say I created it sometime back in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, somewhere in the early years of Reddit. I created it to actually get the name Dragon Lord, the username Dragon Lord with no numbers or anything.
Yeah, that's nice.
That it means I was the first one to use that term. It's like, okay.
And I got mine like in early 2010s. I forget when and where, but Reddit seemed like a thing, and then I sort of forgot it was a thing, and then I remembered, wait, it totally is a thing. Yeah. So
Reddit has come and go in vogue over the years.
Yeah,
it has been useful, and then it's been not useful. All right, well, it looks like we got everything rolling out just the way we need it to. So what we'll do here is I'm going to play the show's intro, and then we'll just roll right into it. WordPress. Oh, miscued. Hang on. All right, one more time. Let's play the intro. WordPress. It's the most popular content management and website solution on the internet. And with over 80,000 plugins to choose from, how do you separate the junk from the gems? Join us for a weekly, unrehearsed conversation about the latest and greatest in WordPress plugins. This is WordPress Plugins from A to Z. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be hiding out there on the globe today. Coming to you direct from the brewery overlooking beautiful southern Vancouver Island. I'm John Overall, and this is the interview show for WP Plugins A to Z.com. And with me today, I have Shawn DeWolfe from Web321. website at web321.co, and we're here to talk about WordPress, the plugins he builds. He builds some fantastic plugins, and just general whatever comes to mind in and around the WordPress community, or even just general developing. Whatever we pop in our minds, where we're going to go with it. So thanks for joining me on the show, Shawn.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on board.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. You know, this is a renewal of the interview show for WP plugins. I'd done them for years in the early years. The show is now going into its 17th year of podcasting. And I've done so many different types of episodes over the years with different interviewers. I even found some that I'm surprised at the people I've actually interviewed over time. And a lot of the people I interviewed before they became famous, now they won't talk to me. So... That's just the way it works, man. The way it works. So at any rate, I'm hoping to renew it and renew WP plugins back to being a go-to show as it once was. So what we've got with it today, we were wandering around on all the stuff today off of your website here and seeing what you offer off of your website and the plugins in particular that you offer. And because I found that you've got a lot of really great plugins wandering off of your site. Do you want to just sort of pop in and start talking about any of them?
Yeah, sure. Is there any that were really interesting to you? Because, I mean, I have found out a bunch of plugins that I put up on the site. There's a whole bunch more that I use for clients that just aren't ready for general purpose. I also have kind of kicking around behind the scenes.
Well, one that's really good, I've gotten to play with it in your beta stage of it, is your WP descriptor. That's actually one that's I think is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty proud of it. So, you know, the core of it is it does image description. So it comes up with a contextual description of what the image is you're looking for. And then what it does in the media section is when you ask it to go and describe an image, it'll come back with the title, the caption, the alt text, and the description, and it will adjust the context of those 4 segments to try to get content that's fitting for it. So you don't have like a 50-word title or a 5-word description. It gives you what you're looking for. And then if you like what you see, great. If you don't like what you see, you can try again and get a new description that matches. Also, because these are running on sites that probably have a given theme to them, like whether you're a antiques store or a comic book website or something, you can preload context about what your site is about. So that way it goes, I'm probably looking at a comic book cover or Chesterfield or a mountain vista, and your description of what you do, what your website does, contributes to what the image context is that comes back. And the intention is to make this work for people who have like a whole bunch of SKUs and images of product images, and they just need to blitz through those descriptions without having to kind of try to write a sonnet for every last one of them. They can just say, this describes it, and then you have your captions, which are great, but you have your titles, which are there for accessibility. And then they've done a lot to try to connect the dots or ink in what the descriptions should be so people can better understand what they're looking at, and search engines can understand what they're looking at.
Well, that's what's really important, is to keep it for the search engines, in my opinion. You know, the accessibility is a good idea, but the vast majority of what you need is one of the biggest mistakes I've seen. One of the biggest mistakes I myself am guilty of committing is, you know, it's like I upload an image. I don't have time to go through and figure this one out, and just boom, boom. Sometimes the image only gets the title of whatever your file name was, which is sometimes a random set of numbers.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally cryptic. When you could put something really helpful in there that really gives people an idea of what they're looking at or why it's important to them.
I don't know, when playing with it in the beta stage that you let me play with it on, in this one here, it made it real easy, and it popped it in. It just popped in all the fields, and then you could either accept it or even edit what was given to you by the AI. And modify it to be something. Sometimes it'll give you almost what you want, and maybe just a couple of words, and boom, you've got it fixed.
Exactly. It's putting it onto the green, and then you just have to tip it in from there.
Yeah, so I found that one to be a very fantastic plugin here. You've got a lot of other plugins ranged around Gravity Forms. You do some amazing work with Gravity Forms. You want to tell us a little bit about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I really love Gravity Forms for the whole time I've been messing with it. It's just super powerful. The one you scrolled past, there was one that you asked for me to take an attempt on, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
a language checker.
Yeah.
That it looks at the language in use on the website and the language. I'm sorry, the language in use by the person and or the phrases they use, and in a way to create conditional logic that may affect whether or not they can submit the form or be redirected to a different form or otherwise do an extra level of checking and safeguards based on what Gravity Forms gives you.
Yeah, and it's worked pretty well. The one I had you get built out for me, it was very nice, and it's been fairly useful for the most part. Although I've had to scale it back because the client I use it on turns out that they needed some of these languages on their website.
Yeah, so so be it. A lot of stuff I do with Gravity Forms otherwise is tying into things like advanced custom fields or tying into user registrations and doing a lot just to create connectivity between the rest of the system and Gravity Forms to really make it do some heavy lifting.
Okay, so what is this about? How do you tie it into ACF, Advanced Custom Fields?
Yeah, so Gravity Forms is really great in how it has a lot of filters and actions available throughout the whole thing. So you can populate your choices in a form, or you could push your settings from a form, like what your decisions are in the form fill, into stuff that goes into post types or into user data, and can move that data back and forth, as well as one form value could be contextual and impact the next form value down. I've done a lot of custom work with Gravity Forms to do that sort of stuff, to put some smarts in to limit what options show up because of precursor selections.
Excellent. All right, so now in wanderings on your site here, I tripped across something that you mentioned. I don't know if I can find it again in this short order. I should have just opened several pages here to make it easier. But you had a particular item on your site talking about helping web developers with their legacy that are retiring. I thought this was an interesting thing, and this is looking like something that I feel is going to be in the future, not too distant future, there's a lot of web developers that are approaching retirement age, or they're slightly past it. They're finally going, you know what, I think I just want to go mow the lawn all day instead of sitting in front of the computer.
Exactly. Yeah. So actually that's in the footer of the page because we really want to highlight this. A lot of the people who show up asking for our work are saying things like, my designer's retired, or my designer's no longer answering emails, or they've had circumstances in their life change and they can no longer, there it is. Did your web designer retire at the bottom?
Oh, there it is. Okay.
So a lot of people will end up coming to us and say, hey, I need help, so-and-so, basically in some way evaporating. And we're there to figure out where all the assets are, like their domain and when it renews, and their hosting and how bad a state it's in, and their plugins and how far they're out of whack, and take all of these problems and start to make those problems go away and start to nurture and care for their website again.
And so you're working on a program to try to promote or talk to other or developers that you may know that are aging out of the system?
Yeah, so we have had conversations with people who have left the field. We're actually inheriting a lot of clients from one of the people I'm in good contact with, and her clients, she's on great terms with all of them, but then she ended up getting a dedicated full-time gig that meant she couldn't keep her body of clients and her new job. So we've basically worked out something where we take on management, and she has all the credentials, so she knows about the clients, and it's pretty easy for the sake of handoff. And then we've got basically an affiliate revenue system, so that the income we generate from those relationships, she gets a cut of. So I mean, if somebody has like a large body of clients and want to basically retire, they can come to us and say, here's what's going on, here's my clients. They do the introduction, we try to bring them on board what we do, and then that exiting web designer could still have some residual income ongoing, and as we keep managing those clients and kick them back something for the connection being made.
Excellent. All right, so let's see where we're going here. What do we got? Let's wander into a little bit of the WordPress world right now. Just
Yeah.
The general state of WordPress and what's happening in it at the moment.
Oh man, what a minefield of a topic.
It is a bit of a minefield of a topic, and we'll avoid the major landmines of it at the moment. We'll just talk about the future of it and how currently there's a lot of people that are looking at WordPress. It's like, oh my God, they're going crazy. It's time to abandon it. It's like, run away from it. It's like, when I first heard that, go ahead.
It'd be akin to saying, oh man, I can't stand Bill Gates, I'm going to stop using Microsoft products. Yes, you can. And when people start to get skittish about Microsoft, they go away from Microsoft. Thousands of them do. But with the millions that are left, it doesn't create a big impact. So everything that's freaking out WordPress site owners and WordPress developers and implementers is going to cause the market share it's not going to make the market share flourish, that's for sure. So I think it may stall it out in the near term. I don't think it's going to turn it away. Like, I honestly, now coming in almost 30 years into web design, I'm almost thinking, what happens with how Google does its searches and how AI is playing a role in stuff? You look at people, I go to Perplexity now for almost all my searches. I almost never go to Google. And if I go to Google, most of the page is taken up with ads that are showing me, paid results, not the organic results. So I start to really distrust Google, and its quality of results is poor. So if you're not being led to websites, the impact and value of websites is starting to get a little iffy.
Right.
And at the same time, if the likes of Perplexity and OpenAI are now giving you the ideal answer without even visiting a web page, like it gives you a synthesis of everything you want, well, what happens to web design at that point? So I think maybe WordPress isn't going to fall down because of its sort of internal issues, like team and founder issues. I think WordPress may be part of a bigger thing of what happens to the internet when you don't need a web page to tell you all the answers about a given thing. And honestly, I've been struggling with what that answer to that question is, because part of me thinks in some way you just somehow publish a data set about everything your business does in a way to spoon feed it to AI, and that the people who do the best job of selling themselves through this optimized system would be the ones who would be the next ones to clean up, as AIs and agents will pick up and decide and filter through the information and come up with stuff for people, and that your salesmanship through that venue might be even more important than your salesmanship on a web page.
The big thing that you just tripped over there talking about it is when you say that what go to web design do if you're getting all the information from the AI. Well, you get the information, but they don't get the solution, meaning they still need to get to a website to get the solution. They'll have to reach out to, they'll have to hit a human sooner or later, or at least the interface for the human to get their solution.
So that could lead a change where you see education, like the whole brand awareness and the stuff that you do with websites and their marketing piece, almost diminish in favor of website, the calls to action, where somebody goes and fills out a booking form or completes some information, and that stuff ties into those systems. Like, give me a form fill, give me a booking, give me a purchase on an e-commerce website. And that if you find a way to spoon feed to the AIs to say, here's the stuff for this website you should visit to commit and take an action, then you're just moving your CTA into AI. Whole bunch of letters right there. And then you call to action into artificial intelligence for it to report the best advice. And then the advice from those sources takes you to the website to actually commit an action and create that sort of income that people are looking for.
Okay, so you still want to get them to the website. Well, one of the interesting things I've done are in this last couple of weeks when I was digging around, prepping myself up to be playing in on GitHub again, is I found a really interesting plugin that somebody's creating. There's two types of plugins actually. One, they kind of go against each other. One of them is a new LLM plugin, a large language model plugin. You put it into your WordPress site, and what it does is it takes your WordPress content and then reformats it for machine reading, for AI reading, much easier than if it hits your website. The other plugin I ran it is exactly the opposite, and it blocks the AI from hitting your website. So it depends on which side of the fence you fall on as to which one you'd want. But if AI, well, it is taking more and more stuff, as I've noticed in Google with the Google AI overview is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing it more and more in the search. But what they're doing with that overview is they're giving you a snippet, and then they've got a link next to it, and then they'll load a bunch of websites in the next column that are related to that snippet they give you.
Yeah, and that's pretty handy. I mean, I think that's got to be where it is AI is going to serve to shortcut your visit.
Yeah.
So that first example of the plugins you talked about, that's the way of the future. Like, I mean, you don't want to have your marketing material under a password, right? You want to be able to have your stuff out there. So an LLM parsing your stuff. Like if you look at under the code of a lot of my stuff on my site, where possible, schema.org code is in there, or it's in there to create the output, so it's machine readable.
Yeah.
Because being machine readable is so huge, because there's all these big players who are looking for your data, and you want to give the data without giving them the value they can walk away from. Like, give them everything up to that point, and then give them a way to come back and get to you for the actual punchline.
Right. Well, that's what we want to have. Well, that still leads down the path of, is WordPress going to stay a viable platform in the coming 5, 10, 15 years?
I think 15 years, it's definitely not. Zooming back to 5 years, I kind of think 5 years from now, WordPress may still be significant. Like, I used to be super keen on Drupal. In the early 2000s, you saw that Drupal was the winning horse, and WordPress was kind of the scrappy blogging software.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
Drupal's adoption just kept climbing and climbing. And now they haven't lost the number of installs, but the internet's gotten bigger, so their percentage share by comparison has shrunk.
Yeah.
And I think going forwards, WordPress is going to probably see the same thing. I think it's at 40-odd%, depending on whose math you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the number of installs is going to drastically increase. I don't think the percentage share is going to crack above 50. And I think it's going to be one of those things where, similar to how if you have a static website with no forums, you're probably not going to get a lot of uptake, or at least a lot of benefit out of it.
Right.
But if you have a lot of interactivity and ways to get people to practically commit, you will. So WordPress has to, in the same way, up its game to make sure it stays with the times, keeps everything machine readable, and then doesn't get lost in the weeds about performance and complexity. Because I've seen some code that, or some site rollouts that are just stupid complex when you just really want it to be simple and clear.
Well, yeah, that's an important thing, is to be simple and clear. So in the short term, where we've got all of the upheaval going on right now between WP Engine and Automatic, that's going to continue now for 6 months to another 2 years, depending on whether they decide to settle or not.
Yeah.
And what's happening with that? I mean, where we thought we had a quiet period and, Matt had changed lawyers, he seemed to have suddenly, I think it was yesterday, day before, he started throwing out a bunch of crazy again.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, I see stuff like he's on wigging out about how, Gutenberg is so popular, it's so great.
Oh yeah.
Look at it, how its install base. It's like, So is Jetpack by that same reason, or Hello Dolly. Like,
Yeah,
the fact that you forced us to use it doesn't mean it's popular. It means it's welded in.
it means it's welded in, and 80% of the people that install WordPress don't know how to change it to begin with. So
Exactly. But I mean, I've talked to so many other developers, and we all, very few of them bless Gutenberg.
I find about 25% of the developers bless Gutenberg and love it. They've accepted it and they love it. And it's like 25%. The other 75% have chosen different versions of their own customizations, from Elementor to blocks to what's the one you use? The one
I like Divi. I'm big on Divi.
You're big on
I'm
Divi.
also getting really big on Breakdance.
That's it, Breakdance. Breakdance is actually, I went and looked it up because you mentioned, I'm like, what is this Breakdance? And I went and looked it up, and it's like, if that had been around before Elementor, I probably would be using that instead.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, once you get yourself into one of these subsections of WordPress and you get really good with the code that works with those subsections, switching to another one is kind of rough.
Yeah. And we're pretty committed to Divi. So, but sometimes its performance tanks out, which I don't like. And we haven't had enough practical exercises with Divi 5 yet to really see if it solves some of these big problems. But then I go to Breakdance, and the stuff just screams. Like, I've got GT metric scores. We're out of the box and no optimizations, and it's coming close to 100%. And it's like a WordPress with a lot of data. And I'm using Breakdance, and that's the distinguishing piece.
Nice.
So it's like, well, I got to say that's the winner.
Yeah. Well, I'm still throwing my latest launch for my new company site straight out of the box with Elementor. It pushed up to almost 90% from GT metrics. So.
Yeah, I think that's it. Performance has got to be key, because if nothing else, WordPress itself is still going to serve out those machine readable parts. Yeah. And if it has to wait forever and a day, those machines polling for that stuff is just going to piece out and go, nope, we're not taking your data, or we're deferring. Somebody else gets the #1 spot for what data we trust the most, because the data delivery is going to, and its speed and performance is going to be a factor in how much these different services do when they index and process the information. So you can't have a dog for speed.
Yeah. Hi, MDN. Nice to see you there. Ignore my typos. I don't have Amber here on the show, or my alter ego to do all my typing for me today. It's just me. My typing kind of sucks. I know it. I mean, I managed to get my typing skills all the way up to a massive 35 words per minute back in the day when I went to college. And since then, it's just gone right back downhill. And it's even getting worse now, because the dictation for Microsoft Word is like 95% accurate now. And it's like, and that's with me and my rambling, mumbling voice sometimes. So when it's that good now, it just I do very little typing. I actually am starting to crank out articles again, because I don't have to do all the typing for them. I just got to clean up the sentence structure that dictation does. Because oh well.
I used to love Dragon Naturally Speaking. They had an app that, this is like 12 years ago, and it did it really well. And then they just discontinued it. So it's like, oh,
that's because somebody bought them and crushed them so that they could develop their own, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact. That's just my guess. That generally happens. But I remember Dragon Naturally Speaking, when it was first created in the early 2000s. It never got very good. And during that time. But
the app I used before, I was like, it must have been 2013 or so. And it was very impressive. I was on my way to being a novelist again, of just kicking out a bunch of stuff I could speak while I was on walks or whatever. Just kind of, instead of listening to music, I'm making something while I'm walking. So that's just me.
Well, if you can pull it off while you're walking, I can barely chew gum and walk at the same time. So it's okay. All right, so where are we at? We're wandering around here inside the WordPress community and what's going to happen with it. Most folks realize that WordPress isn't going nowhere. Even when I've been poking myself around on the Reddits and the Quora forums, Reddit, Quora, and Substack, I've been digging into those a lot lately. And only a small percentage of people are abandoning WordPress for some other platform. And as I was digging around doing some other research, I started discovering plugins I hadn't even thought to look for. The problem, the reason I hadn't seen these plugins mostly is because a lot of plugins are not contained in the WordPress repository. And after what Automatic or WordPress pulled on WP Engine back in the fall, people are scared to put their plugins on Automatic now or on WordPress repository now. So a lot of people are going self-hosted, or as we've been working on, because you and I are doing some work together, we've been working on getting it so you can use the
GitHub.
GitHub. Thank you. It's like the brain just lost it.
That's right. I saw the spark go, and I said,
GitHub, man. So you can use GitHub to do and host your automatic updates for the plugin. And when I was doing some research, I tripped across, I sent you to the guy's repo. Somebody has written a full set of plugin for either self-hosting your plugin or hosting it up on GitHub and somewhere else. So it's like almost everything you need is available somewhere. You just got to dig deep enough to find it.
Exactly. And I think like what you get out of WordPress.org is the discovery mechanism. And that's huge. Like, I've published stuff all over the place, and if you don't put on WordPress.org, you're guaranteed to have no one know it exists, and then you become a very well kept secret. So you got to have a good discovery mechanism. And last year, last year I started off searchallplugins.com, and then I just didn't keep pushing it, and that was one of those things I wanted, where it was a real agnostic source that anyone could upload a plugin and have that included, as well as at some point I was going to put in a discovery mechanism where you include stuff. And then the plugin that it had would kind of go in and intercept the add plugin function in WordPress. And then it would augment the list that you get from WordPress.org with the Search All Plugins data set. And then you could see everything, because if you didn't, you'd miss stuff like Elementor, Elementor as a freebie, but Gravity Forms or WP Forms, like all these huge products that are very cornerstone of WordPress. If you looked at WordPress.org, you'd think don't exist.
Yeah. So, okay, so this Search All Plugins is a project of yours.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God. I didn't even know you were building this.
Yeah, I started along with it last year and got a little bit ways down the road, and then it was like,
have you considered asking for some community support for this thing? Now that there's some serious want for this, because in the last 4 months, we're in February now, aren't we? January, December. It's about 4 months. Let's go with November and December and January. In the last 3 months, there have been several new alternate repos launched onto the internet for WordPress plugins. There's one out there, I forget the fellow's name from over on the mainland, who's created a repo that searches that the plugins are all hosted on GitHub. And then there's another one. We've highlighted a couple in the show. In the last few shows, we've highlighted a couple of repos. And as I find them, I try to highlight them, bring them to people's attention so that more and more people will know that these repos are starting to exist. But something such as this, that can go out and tag all these different repos, could be big. And maybe some of these other developers that are launching it might even be interested in this. If your code's open source, throw it up on GitHub and see if we can get some shares.
Yeah. I think like WordPress.org does a lot to create and vet stuff as it comes through. Yeah. So I have to make sure that this would do that same level of vetting or trust, or somehow put trust into the mix.
Well, I guess that's a bigger, tougher thing, because WordPress.org, they do, every plugin that goes up there has to go through the security thing. Although in the beginning they just put everything up that came through.
Yeah.
But I guess there was more trust in the beginning than there is now. especially with the plugin that I'd highlighted a few shows back of the Russian plugin that was out there hacking people's sites. So yeah, you do got to pay attention to what you're downloading and the source you get it from, and you know, you do have to pay attention to that. So yeah, I guess that would be a tough call for this, as to how.
But somehow put in. I mean, you could do something where, if it had a lot of 5 stars and a lot of adoption, it would position better than something that didn't have much in the way of stars or adoption. As well as the reputation of the publisher would also factor in. So some weirdo who flies by night wouldn't get a lot of love.
I think you'd have to dig more on the reputation of the developer, because I've run into, I have literally reviewed thousands of plugins over the years.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few really great ones that have come, and even though I push them, they had them in the repo, but they didn't get very much adoption, and they just sort of vanished away. Or in particular instance, I remember one particular one, the guy was building a membership plugin. It was the most fantastic thing ever, but he ran into the negativity and the bad side of WordPress.org, and they treated him so horribly, he packed up his bags and went and took another job, went to a new career.
Yeah.
You know, I remember his last emails, because I was emailing back and forth to him for a few months, and then he just walked away. He said, "I'm walking away from this. I can't do it anymore." Sorry, dude.
It is so amazing that, and that can happen. And I mean, that's the other thing. I think before the senior problems at WordPress cropped up, there's a lot of stuff about the gatekeeper problems and a lot about the misogyny that were really creating negative outcomes, massively negative outcomes in the community. And what happens with some of these products or things that come in from people who are either new or not known in the field.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because you have some really good voices and can contribute some new energy.
Right.
And I saw the flip side of that problem play out in the Drupal community. We had some bad code and bad concepts from people who admitted, I'm not a coder. I have my degree in sociology. And I just started coding. And it's like, well, how much are you missing on what you need to have in the code?
Yeah. Because
you're smart, but you don't know about the specifics. But because they're vocal or well appreciated or had supporters, their code was very much fanned and made prominent.
Right.
And then you go the opposite way of really solid code from somebody who just has bad bedside manner, and it'll just die.
Yeah.
And WordPress is at the risk of having the same thing if you don't let a variety of voices come in, give them respect, and park any animosity. Yeah.
Well, this is definitely something that I think I'm going to poke at you about for the search plugins, because this would be a dream.
Yeah.
This would be a dream item if even it was set up to just search without being able to, with a big giant warning that says beware of the code you download or where you get it from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could load it up with caveats just so people know what they're getting into. But yeah, which is why I had like a form, like an intake form, and then I could do the manual look. But I know very quickly if this took off, it would be impractical to
you couldn't do
the gatekeeper.
It's the same problem WordPress had in the beginning. Is, you know, once they did that and then they needed the gatekeeper, they had to get volunteers to come in and do the vetting, because they couldn't pay the money necessary to it. And the other problem is pretty soon you end up with the kind of gatekeepers that, well, if you don't quite fit their profile for whatever their profile might be, you're blocked at every channel.
Yeah,
I know that one. I know that one personally and firsthand. You know, it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It happened to me, which is why I see these plugin authors. Please, you know, give it a review on WordPress.org. Sorry, buddy, I can't. I've been banned from WordPress.org for 10 years now. So, not 10,
yeah, it's
8 years. 8 years.
It's the problem of who watches the watchers.
Yeah, yeah. There's the problem of that comes in, and yeah, it becomes kind of complex in multiple ways as the more you dig into it. So, Wow, you've got some really great items here. Oh, I need to bring that up to show the world what this looks like. So you look like you got a form here to, people can submit to comment with you and maybe connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone listening to this, go fill out the form on searchallplugins.com and reach out to Shawn. Tell him if you're interested in helping make that happen, because I would love to see something like that happen. That would be
and replace that tragic logo. I don't know. I mean, somehow I must have been on heavy drugs and the computer at the same time, but that logo's going away. It's the last week of that logo forever. I just cannot believe I let that happen.
If all else fails, upload the image into a AI. I use Grok for these things, but upload the image and say, create me a logo based on this image and see what it can do for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so sad. But anyways, it shows I'm a bit more of a developer than a designer on this.
Well, I'm not an artist either, so most of my artwork now is AI. A lot of my artwork in the past, I have done really good art, but it's not my forte. Now I have other people to do art for me. So
yeah.
I don't.
No, we have.
You have
at Web321, we do have talented design people. Aaron's turned out some great stuff. We've got other people we tap into who work with us, who turn out really great stuff. So when we need the design depth, we've got it. But I just did this one as my own skunk works and soup to nuts and include a logo.
Yeah, include a logo, man. You gotta have a logo. Must have a logo, even if it's the most horrendous thing in the world.
Exactly.
I've done that a few times. Start with the horrendous logo. It's like the logo now for WP plugins. That's not what I started with on this show. This was actually submitted to us by a listener way back in the beginning. I think the show was like 5 years old, and one of my listeners, went, "Hey, I can create your logo." And I said, "I can't pay you." He said, "No, I'll create it and just give it to you." I said, "Okay, nice. I'll take it." And then I gave him full credit for it for a couple of years, and then I lost track of giving credit to the logo author. Sooner or later, I'll find out who created it again by going through old stuff, and then I'll recredit the person for it. But yeah, they did a great job on it.
Nice. Well, it works. It's cute. It's subtle. The little ground turning into a mouth. It's kind of cute.
It was very subtle. It was very different from what my original logo was. Which was not all the best thing in the world, but it was a logo to start.
Yeah.
And on the whole, it's been an interesting trip for me, and realizing that this show here is, well, when I'm cleaning up my primary website of johnoverall.com and archiving everything there, as we've moved everything over to WP plugins and over to WP Pro, and I realized that I have over 1,200 podcasts produced for this show in there.
Wow.
So that means, we got 643 episodes of the actual podcast, which means I have another 600 episodes of interviews and other miscellaneous shows that I did over time that were just plugged into the podcast feed.
Yeah.
So that means I've done a lot of episodes of different things for it, and now I realize that this show, at one point, it was very well known. I was recently on, they haven't aired it yet, so let's hope it airs sometime soon, the WP Tavern Jukebox. And the current host there, he was telling me that my show helped inspire him back in the beginning. He was listening to my show back when I was in the first few hundred episodes with my first co-host, Couch. So
nice.
And it's like, well, that's kind of cool that, I actually made an impact on somebody and I didn't even know it. So
that's excellent.
It's kind of neat to hear those things over time when you run into people's like, I remember you.
There's somebody senior at Chaosium, the game company behind RuneQuest and Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And way back, I used to do a lot of game writing and publish like in Dragon Magazine and stuff like that way back in the day. And I met this guy, and he was the brother of a close friend of mine.
Yeah.
And the funny part was, he says, "Oh yeah, it was really cool to meet somebody who actually was in game design. It really said I could go and do something with this." And now he's like senior at Chaosium, and it's like, huh. I inspired him, and look where he is. And it's like, well, congrats on that one, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's kind of interesting, and that's the whole idea. Is we want to inspire more people, and we need in particular to inspire the younger generations coming up behind us now. Me, I'm getting to that age where I want to retire from this industry, and you need to have some other good developers and people come up behind us to carry the torch and run.
Exactly. Yeah, the idea that I would have been in web design this long is like, really? But here I am.
Yeah, well, that's it. I've been doing this now for web design. 2004, I opened my first design company. 1999, I opened my first hosting. I launched my first server for web hosting in 1999. So I've been doing it since 98. I see you were doing it since 96. You got a couple of years on me.
Yeah, and in the 80s is when I nerded out on the Apple computers, and then the IBM PCs, doing game design, or trying to do game design back then. And yeah, didn't get a game finished, but so be it.
Yeah.
And then came back into the skill set in the mid 90s.
Yeah, that's where I started, was one of my first game, way back. But I spent my 80s not touching computers. I was working as an automotive mechanic and barely touching computers in the 80s. But all right, well, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to close out this part of the show for those on the downloads, and they can pick up if you want to check out any further stuff. We'll be here for a few more minutes after over on the YouTube channel. So come back to us after the outro credits, and we'll be strictly on the YouTube channel. So go over there and check it out, and we'll be right back.
Reminders for the show. All show notes can be found at wppluginsa2z.com. And while you're there, subscribe to the newsletter for more useful information delivered directly to your inbox. WP Plugins A to Z is a show that offers honest and unbiased reviews of plugins created by developers because you support the show. Help keep the show honest and unbiased by going to wppluginsa2z.com/donate and set the donation level that fits your budget. Help us make the show better for you by subscribing and reviewing the show at Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and in the iTunes Store. You can also leave us a review on our Facebook page using wppluginsa2z.com/Facebook. You can also watch the show live on YouTube, check out the screencasts and training videos, and remember to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of all new videos. Follow the show on Twitter at WPPluginsA2Z. John can also be reached at his website, johnoverall.com, or email him directly, john@wppro.ca. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the show. This show is copyright by johnoverall.com. So until next time, have yourselves a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be out there on the globe today. My almost 18-year-old boy forever preserved as a 4-year-old child.
That's excellent.
Well, what was funny, that little laugh you hear at the end, I was just preparing for my very first podcast. I was working with my equipment, setting it up. I was doing sound tests and recording tests. And he comes wandering over while I had the record button pushed. He grabs the microphone, does that, and then walks away. And I went, oh my God, did I record that? I went, holy shit, I did. And I played it back, and it's like, oh, that's going at the end of every show.
Excellent.
So
good origin story on that one.
Well, you couldn't plan something like that. That's hilarious. That was just so spontaneous. And it's like, for no apparent reason, he came over because I had the microphone on a stand next to me, standing on the floor, and I've got wires everywhere, and he comes wandering over, grabs the microphone, does that, and walks away. It's like, really? But unfortunately, I had the record button pushed because I was doing mic checks and other tests to make sure everything was working. And so I snipped that, and I've got it saved in about 10 different places on several hard drives, so it doesn't get lost.
That's excellent.
So yeah. So that was a great show, and thanks. I appreciate it, man. And we've got
My pleasure.
we're still rolling here on YouTube, and we can roll for a few more minutes. So most of the interviews going forward, in fact, all the interviews going forward will be a half hour to 45 minutes, give or take, if I can get them that long or whatever it takes. And then something at the beginning, something at the end, and something to entice people back over to my YouTube channel to bring that back to life.
Nice. Yeah. Well, hopefully this gave some value,
Oh, yeah. Well, I believe it had a lot of value in it. I did. And I'm looking forward to some of the projects that you've got going coming to fruition. And
yeah.
That search all plugins one, I didn't even know you were working on something that crazy.
Yeah, it didn't take a ton of effort. It's just, getting it out there is easy. Getting it popular and getting it all ruggedized is where the finesse is. So
yeah, well, the thing I'm finding the tough finesse is I'm trying to promote the show in places, but it's really many of the places, like even like Reddit, there's only one. I'm only able to find one forum that I could actually put in. To, if you want to be on the show, come here. Other ones is like no promotions, period. Whatever. It's like okay, so well, we've got nothing but questions here. Most of them lame, so no wonder nobody sees your forum. But it's like trying to figure out how to get stuff promoted is definitely a tough one, and it was way easier in the beginning.
Oh God, yeah.
And now,
I remember so many of the ways things were easier 10 years ago. Back in my day, it's amazing the stuff back then. By now, it's just nowadays. I think everyone has just put up the walls so high that nothing's getting over. You have to spend like crazy to get over those walls. And it's not, I don't think it's a good advent. I don't think you get real stuff. I don't think you get stuff that's legitimately could have traction. I think if you pay to play, it's the only thing you're seeing is what somebody has basically bribed their way into getting into the front page. And
that often isn't the best of the stuff, because some of the quality, I mean, that the reason open source exists is because of the people who couldn't pay to play, because they would create something, and then once it got picked up, more people would share it. I think what's happened is the sharing of good stuff, a lot of people have just stopped sharing it for some reason.
Yeah.
And they're more interested in sharing whatever the latest news is on Tay-Tay at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, a while back, because I was working at UVic for a while, and at Royal Roads too, but so many people out there are publishing like crazy in academia with their work, because there's this phrase, publish or perish, where if you don't publicize your work and publish on what you're working on, it's as though you don't exist. So when I really came to that realization, I said, I got to start blogging again. And it's like, well, I like coding. Why can't I just kick up more code? So I started kicking out WordPress plugins and other JavaScript things, because again, if publish or perish, and trying to create a lot of stuff that hopefully is of value to people that they can take and use and make their stuff better.
Well, that's what my goal is, to reshare as much as I used to share. It's like at one point in time, this show had several thousand listeners. And when I was refixing all of my RSS feeds, like my RSS feed had gotten semi-broken over the last few years. It actually got split somehow between the two websites. I ended up refocusing it all back down to one website. And by the time I got it all refocused back down and cleaned up everything, it turns out we've got 600 subscribers to the show.
Nice.
That are actual subscribers, and approximately half of them download the show every week. So that's an excellent place to start from where I started the beginning. Was like, oh my God, I got a download. Oh my God, somebody downloaded my podcast. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, 10 downloads, 20, 30. It's like, I remember those days. Those were really heady days. It's like, oh my God, people are downloading. And then all of a sudden I get people contacting me and reaching out to me and asking questions. It's like, oh wow, I'm making progress. So
that's excellent.
Now I'm going backwards, and I'm trying to reduplicate and recreate that from the standing point we're at now, which is, we've got a bit of a head start over anyone who tries to create a brand new podcast in this field. You know, because creating a new podcast in this field, it's like I was looking through the list of headstones in the podcast index and the Apple index. There's about 30 or 40, maybe 50 WordPress podcasts, and about 10 are active.
Oof. Well, I mean, I think when I discover a podcast or YouTube channel, I kind of like the feeding frenzy you can do. Like there's a site called the Y Files, or a YouTube channel, the Y Files, I love. When I first got into them, I had like a 3-week span where I could just go back and see back episodes like crazy. And then finally I got to the point where it was only new episodes. It was a little sad. But with you having 1,200 podcasts and 600 plus episodes in there, you got a lot to feed from before people go, I've heard all the John stuff. So
well, what's interesting too is there's a lot to feed from, considering my first 60 or 70 episodes was by myself. Then my next 300 episodes was with my co-host Marcus. Then my next couple of hundred episodes were by myself again. And then the last couple of hundred episodes have been with my daughter. Yeah. So it's
I like where Amber comes in and mixes stuff up.
Yeah, well, she actually reinvigorated my liking for the show. I was ready to just give it up. I was just tired of doing it. And having her come in as the co-host helped reinvigorate the show and help me look at it in a different light again and to actually see the value in it again. But I had just hit the point where I just didn't want to do it. But now I'm back to enjoying what I was doing again.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's it. You got to have a vibe for it. And sometimes if stuff isn't gelling, it just feels like you're wading through quicksand. And I had definitely those periods in the last year. And now I'm like, come on, let's go do some shit and really get going. Right?
Get some completions and successes and other bits and pieces. But yeah, I've been enjoying it, and I've been enjoying bringing it all back to life again. But as I going through and I start to realize, wait a minute, some of this stuff is still going quite well. I just forgot. I hadn't looked at the stats in so long. I just assumed that it was dead.
Yeah, something hums, right? And then you just realize, oh, wait a second. It's like almost like compounding interest, like that. That bank account you had when you were 15 that you forgot about, that it somehow stayed alive. And it's like, whoa, all Aunt so-and-so's checks. Look what they've added up to.
Yeah, I wish I had one of those bank accounts. Somebody dumped $5 in regularly since I was 5.
Yeah, I wish, No, I don't.
And that was back in the days when banks actually gave you compounding interest for your bank account.
Yeah.
Now they charge you for the pleasure of storing your money in their bank.
Exactly. Oh, don't even get me started. There's an hour-long episode all by itself.
Yeah, well, that one doesn't relate to WordPress. That's just a side. That's just a side note on a commentary on society itself as a whole.
Yeah.
But on the whole, just to sort of wrap it up a bit, I myself don't think WordPress is going anywhere anytime soon, especially with some of the new projects I see people creating in WordPress right now, and some of the new directions I see people taking it. Now, some of them are trying to take it in the Gutenberg direction. Others are taking it in the Elementor. The other one is Breakdance, and the other one is Divi. There's one other page builder out there, a Beaver builder. That's the other one. That's the other builder. So the page builders are moving it in the right direction for many things. The page builders are slowly starting to overcome their drag on the system problems.
They're now creating a net benefit of development and what it looks like in release. Yep,
there you go. I like that, Hemdian. No matter how good something is, the creator needs a refresher moment every so often, or everything can seem stale. Yep, that's exactly true.
Excellent. Yeah, good point.
Nice quote, Hemdian. Very good. I like that. Yeah, Hemdian, we really greatly appreciate you showing up for the show. You're always here regularly. You've been a listener you were a listener way back in the days when I used to do meetups. I remember you coming to a couple of meetups. God, I haven't done those in 5 or 6 years either. That was the days when I used to actually have regular WordPress meetups, and you actually spoke at a couple of them over time too.
Yeah, those are good back in the day. They were good. It's just, COVID killed meetup.
COVID killed meetup. I had to get a refund on. I think I had like 4 of them booked at a place, and I had to get a refund on all my booking fees.
Well,
At least I got the refund.
yeah, that much is good. Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know if meetups will ever come back. Especially, they won't. Anything I do won't come back under the official header of WordPress, simply because of the way WordPress is treating it nowadays. The WordPress Foundation is treating anything where you try to use WordPress as the official title of it. They're treating people very poorly now.
Yeah.
And so I won't be using it like that. It'll be like CMS that references WordPress. It'll be other things, other ways of doing it. It'll be much the same way that we used to have the social media convention, I think is what they call
The social media camp
social media camp, because they used to do them under, they did them under the WordPress camp banner. And then WordPress camp started making it so hard for them to actually make it even break even, that they just went, no, you know what? If we're going to do this, we'll make a profit. We'll run a better camp, and we'll be able to do things the way we want to do them without any interference.
Exactly. And social media camp did so much. It was great.
Yeah.
WordCamp, like you said, got so restrictive. And I remember one year they basically ran a WordCamp and everything but name.
Yeah.
Up at UVic, and it worked great. And it was everything except WordCamp, so it didn't have the WordCamp sort of little wind beneath its wings, but otherwise it was it worked out great. It's just you didn't get a lot of value out of having the WordCamp tacked on the end, and sure lost a lot.
Yeah, well, in the beginning there was a lot of value in it, and then they put so many rules and restrictions on it. But even there's a WordCamp over in Europe right now, getting ready to happen, where they've got a side-by-side camp going with it that is doing things that they would like to do under WordCamp, but they can't because of restrictions, so they're running it at the same time.
Oof. Well, it makes sense. I mean, everyone's in town anyways.
Yeah. So so there are things like that happening in this community where there's a bit of a split. You know, we've got the WP something foundation community, the WP Community Foundation. Right. I think it's what it's called, which is, you know, going after like WordPress and other CMS and open source systems, and trying to bring something to it. They're the ones that just got $500 million from GoDaddy to support them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and that says a whole lot from GoDaddy to dump that money into it, because GoDaddy wants to see something like that succeed, and to dump it there instead of dumping it on WordPress.
That's the big tell about parking the money, because there was a period where GoDaddy and a lot of ISPs are kind of put a stink on WordPress and would rather you didn't have WordPress in favor of like the GoDaddy builder and all these other nightmare solutions. Yeah. And then they had like a little dawning, and then went WordPress, everything WordPress. Yeah. So this is showing that they're continuing down that road. Well,
what's funny when you mention that, in the beginning of WordPress, its first couple years, I was a hosting provider. I was still I was doing hosting at that time. There, I was also running a computer store. So I had my hosting business and my computer store, and I had 2 clients put WordPress on my servers, and it brought my servers to their freaking knees because it was just so poorly coded at the time. And it did such a piss poor job of accessing the MySQL databases. It's like if the website got more than 100 consecutive visits, it just brought the server to its knees.
Yep. Yeah, I remember lots of really dodgy code.
Yeah.
The thing that always got me was it's serial amnesia, that if you swap themes, you'd kill your menu content and you have to rebuild it.
I remember that. I remember that problem.
So like you got WP Bakery and Enfold on a machine. You go, I like WP Bakery, but let's see what Enfold looks like. You just dip your toe over and look and come back. It's like, okay, well now I have an hour's work of frantically rebuilding the menu before everyone screams at me.
Yeah. TTRPG site alone changed from custom ASP classic to WordPress, and yet some people in the community are still promoting my old brand. Oh, okay. As a branded, I've loads of custom redirects. Oh yeah, okay. Rebranding can be good as long as you don't accidentally lose your traction in your previous brand built up. Oh yeah, well, fortunately I'm not doing any rebranding. I'm just reviving a brand.
Yeah.
and I won't be losing any traction, because the joys about rebuilding a WordPress website now is you don't lose, unless you do something silly like change your site structure, your permalink structure. You don't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because everything stays where it goes unless you start changing page names. But if you don't do that, you can rebrand, redo everything. You can throw out the entire theme now and bring in a whole new theme, and you will not lose your SEO or your links, because they'll all stay the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you had to go from ASP Classic to WordPress, yeah, you lose everything then. Yeah, I remember ASP. Hey, you ever built an ASP?
Oh God, yeah. That ASP was my go-to for about 3 years.
Yeah. So
and then .NET came along, and it was like, I had a little bit of success, and I was like, what the hell do I do now? Because it jumped the bridge real easy.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wishing to go back to ASP, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
And then PHP, I was deep into PHP by that point.
Yeah.
I just never looked back.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember ASP. I actually ran Microsoft Server for a couple of years too. Oh God.
I did too.
That was a nightmare. I had one online. It's like, oh God, I hated that one.
It was just like a week after 9/11, and I got a call from the server ISP and said, you got to come down right now. We're taking your server offline. And literally they're unplugging it from the network. And he took me around to the back and showed me the little flickery network traffic status light on your card.
Yeah.
He goes, this is what it was turned off. And whenever it's there, no matter what, it always flickers because lack of data. And then he said, this is what's happening. He plugged it in and immediately went solid green. Like, it was just the most traffic I've ever seen pushed through a network card. And then he unplugged it again. And the thing that had saved me was I had, by weird glitch, put all my everything in this very seldom used location on the server. Mm-hmm. And before it was otherwise, there was always a go-to like inetpub or something where all the files would always go for your web server. Yeah. And that directory was all chock full of jihadist sort of crazy stuff. But my other directory where all the website files were was pristine. Oh, nice. So it's like, I cleaned it up, we shorted up, we blocked the IPs, and the attacks faded. But yeah. That was my ASP hosting experience.
There you go. We'll bring you back on the show. We'll tell war stories just for a show.
Excellent.
That'll be a fun one. I'm going to call this one a show. We've been at it for an hour. Thank you all. Thanks, Hemdian. And, well, we've seen other people. We've popped up to as many as 5 people at a time while listening today. So, hey, we actually got some visitors popped in. So thanks, everyone. We greatly appreciate it. And because of, habit, I'm going to play a little music to carry us on out.
These are the days of thunder. We're gonna make time stand still. A quarter after midnight, and I'm watching the wall. Sometimes I feel so uptight, I just can't sleep at all. Every day doing the same old thing, we're losing time. The weekend comes, we gotta have some fun and rewind. These are the days of thunder. We're gonna make time stand still. We gotta feel the hunger, hanging over the edge just to taste the thrill. I feel the rope tightening, choking
Alrighty, folks. That's all I got now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oh my god, that is amazing!
Oh no. Obviously, we just lost the satellite feed.